Yo, wear a fucking mask when you diddy pop. Fuck a Trump supporter, fuck a Fed, fuck a city cop. Grew up in the city where the children's popping 50 shots. Say you in the streets, but we know that you really not. Riding in a bucket with my OG the pistola. Justice for the family.
Hey y'all, it's good to be back. I'd just like to make a quick announcement before we get into the video. I finally launched a Discord server for my channel, about damn time, and there I'll be hosting all future live shows for Big Brain University, Problematic Podcast, and more. And so if you'd like to attend those events or hang out with me and my comrades, I'd love for you guys to join. We're a pretty relaxed community and we like to talk about all kinds of different topics, so if you're interested, there will be a link in the description. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy the video.
You're not gonna start by talking your fucking Russian shit?
No, because
this intro. Do it.
This is gonna be spliced into the video anyway, so it's I don't
Do
need
it.
Witam towarzysze, to jest Polinkarz, and we're gonna have a discussion about the campaign, the first union campaign that Zach and I did back in, what was it, 2019?
It started in 2019, yeah.
Yeah. So this was pretty much just before COVID like really hit. So we have some. We're just gonna go over the all the points of campaign kind of chronologically. So what our intentions were when we first decided that we wanted to do a union campaign, we knew that we wanted to pick an industrial target. We weren't going to go into like Walmart or something. We really wanted to organize on an industrial basis due to the lack of industrial organization in general in America today. And at the time, our first target was this company that...
A textile factory.
Yeah, it was a textile factory. But for some reason, I couldn't get hired at that place. So instead, I went to a different company called Unicast that was an aluminum foundry. And when I got hired there, I pretty quickly realized how garbage the situation was there. I mean, the pay was really bad, even for the area. Like, generally wages in New Hampshire are higher than, like, say, in the South. But I believe my starting rate was $15 an hour, which for the level of, like, danger that my job entailed, it was way too little. And the people that worked in the department that just preceded mine, the actual foundry where they melted down all the aluminum and poured it into casts, they were getting paid even less than me, and they arguably had the most dangerous job on the shop floor. So pretty quickly, I realized that this is a good target. The pay was bad, the conditions were poor, there was a lot of hazards, and it didn't really seem like the company really gave a shit about its employees, especially. I mean, pretty quickly, I observed the high turnover rate, and it just seemed like a really good target. So pretty, like, shortly after I got hired there, Zach got laid off from his job at the textile plant. And so it was kind of perfect timing because he got laid off, and you know, I just said, okay, well, come to Unicast, and we'll just do a campaign here. So I put in a good word for him with management. And you know, and when I first started there, that was my first like real industrial job. So I wasn't very fit at that time, and you know, it was definitely I definitely had some initial struggle really kind of being able to do the work, but it didn't take long for me to get used to the physical nature of the job and actually like start putting in an efficient labor. And generally, like, you know, I tried to be as friendly as possible, you know, not only with my coworkers but with management, and you know, that allowed me to essentially convince management to hire Zach, like, really without question. So he applied. Zach got hired into the foundry. Do you want to talk a little bit about your initial experience in the foundry, Zach?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, you know, they hired me for $1 more than you, and that wasn't because I was in the foundry. It was literally just because, like, I just, like, finagled my way in the interview, you know? Like,
well, you had more experience, too.
Yeah, but I don't think that was why. I literally just told them like, like I'm not gonna work here. Let's pay me 16, and they're like, okay, but don't tell anyone that we're paying you that much, which is obviously illegal, right? Like they can't do that. But
Right.
I mean, we had to pull parts out of a like blast furnace, and obviously it was. I don't know how hot it would get, man, but it would get maybe like 1,500 degrees or something like that, and like we had to wear like the entire suit and everything, and it's like, like a lot of the PPE was like severely damaged and it had holes in it to the point where like if you weren't wearing like two pairs of gloves underneath, like it would like give you like third-degree burns, like some of the shields and shit that you like wear as part of the suit. Like imagine this suit is like it's kind of like the BioShock fucking dude. It's kind of like that, except it's like flame retardant, like Kevlar shit. And what like the shield, you need the shield to see, right? So you don't trip and fucking die and fall into a melting pot of like boiling aluminum. But like, dude, they were dirty as hell, and like they didn't fucking bother fucking replacing them, man. And there was a lot of times where like my suit would like catch on fire and shit, and it's just like, I mean, this isn't fucking like Ramstein Live or something, man. Like I'm not trying to be like on fire on a fucking daily basis, but like that's how it was in there,
Yeah.
and like I'm paying you fucking $16 an hour to be doing some fucking firefighter shit, it was fucking stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I had essentially the same experience when I first started working there. I mean, it wasn't as hazardous because I wasn't dealing with like molten aluminum or like going into a blast furnace, but definitely my job wasn't particularly safe either. I mean, we were dealing with a lot of high because essentially what my department came immediately after Zach's. They would pour the aluminum into casts, and then the casts would get passed over to my department. And once the aluminum had cooled down to a point where it was solid and not like extremely hot, the parts would get hanged up on this conveyor, get carried around in my machine that I was operating when I first started there. That basically is this giant robotic arm that would use like 20,000 psi water pressure to blast the concrete shell off of the part.
Didn't you say you were in there once?
I
Like,
was
when
in
the
there all
door
the time. No, yeah, I was. Well, not when the door was closed, but like
That would be fucking terrible.
that would be terrible. Yeah, I mean that would definitely be terrible. I mean that was something that I was afraid of, because like I would have to go in there pretty much like every other day. It was this big metal box. That's where the robot arm was, and like there's this giant like blast door essentially that would close and stop the water pressure from just like killing you. but but I was in there like there was this big door, and I would have to go in there and shovel all of the fucking concrete out, and wheelbarrow it into like this giant essentially recycling bin for concrete. But yeah, it was definitely always scary to think like like what if somebody doesn't realize I'm fucking in here and they fucking lock me in and then try to run the machine. It wasn't likely that would happen, but it was definitely something that was on my mind. But I guess what was really bad about having to go in there and clean was like it was super claustrophobic, and there was a lot of steam in there just because the water pressure was so high that like all of the water, like, well, not all of it, but a lot of the water would just get vaporized and just fill up the box with just steam. And so it was hard to breathe in there, and it was hard to move, and I would have to like literally climb underneath like the platform to get all of the mud out and shit, and it was not fun at all. And I actually passed out in there at one point, but I'll get to that later. So mine and Zach's first impressions were like, holy shit, like this job is not safe at all. And we were definitely not getting like even remotely fairly compensated for like the hazardous work that we were doing. In the initial steps of any union campaign, you really want to, not do anything suspicious. You just want to, work as hard as you can, at least do your work as effectively as you can. And just be friendly to people, be friendly to everyone, at least be like superficially friendly to management, because you didn't want even an inkling of suspicion. How far in did we call the IAM? You remember, Zach? How long have we been working there?
I think a month and a half, around, or maybe like a month to a month and a half or so.
Yeah,
I
something like that.
Sent in a thing to the IAM. It's just like this is an organizing request, basically. And what happened was I found the IAM on their website because it was like, oh, like I got hired as a machinist, right? And I was like, is there like a machinist union? And like there was, and I just sent in like the details of the company, all everything about the company that I knew, like the number of employees and everything. Like a couple days later, the union organizer called me and like left me a voicemail saying like, like, do you want to start a campaign and all that. So we eventually met with him, and he gave us pamphlets and stuff, and gave us like a general like outline and strategy and everything.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it was roughly a month to a month and a half in that we got, and we reached out to multiple different unions. At least like Zach did most of the stuff on that end. I don't know exactly which unions we reached out to, but I know that go ahead.
Yeah, I reached out to fucking. Well, actually, I had reached out like even when I was at the textile factory. I had reached out to because like there were people there that were saying they wanted a union too. But I reached out to the United Auto Workers, and I also reached out to Unite here, and neither of them ever got back to me. You can also send in a general request to the AFL-CIO for them to like refer you to a union, but they have never gotten back to me. And like honestly, the Machinist Union are the only people who have actually fucking responded. So I mean, it's like they get general preferability, like just for that alone, right? So,
Yeah, the IAM was super helpful. They actually, they actually reached back out to us and pretty much instantly hooked us up with a rep that was willing to support a campaign. And so because he got in, I think 2 weeks after I got in. So I'd been there 2 weeks longer than him, and but we both were just doing our jobs and just being friendly and just establishing ourselves in that time. But when we got in contact with the IAM rep, they pretty much instantly. Well, after I think what was it, like 1 or 2 weeks, they sent us like materials, pamphlets, and all these different material. I think authorization cards.
yeah.
And this was the first time that we had that either of us had done anything like this, so we were just kind of like, when we got the materials, we're just like, you know what, fuck it, we're just gonna start handing these out like pretty much the next day. Now the rep said,
Yeah, we were just like, we pretty much just saw the pamphlets in the car. We're like, all right, we're just gonna do it. Like we definitely should not have done it that way. We just got too like fucking.
We got really excited.
Excited. Yeah.
Yeah. So we went ahead and and to be clear, the rep recommended that we wait at least until we pass our probationary periods, which is 90 days before we even attempted to organize. But really, they wanted us to be in there, long after the probationary period before we even start talking to people. And that was good advice, and we just didn't take it for the reasons that we just mentioned. But ultimately, we just we just got really excited by the prospect of what we were doing, and we just went for it, and we thought that we thought that the conditions were so bad and the pay was so shitty that like it didn't really matter when we started. It's just like we believed that there would be a good amount of support, instantly, just because of the conditions of the factory.
And
so,
actually, like to our credit, like before we went in the second time, there was actually a lot of support. Like we didn't really talk to very many people that said no. Remember, because like remember that John dude, he was instantly just like, yeah, dude, like I'll fucking sign up. And then we had Angel, that I think Angel signed up, right? Who else did we have? We had Adrian, who he signed up. So that was at least 3 people, and then that was like 5 cards. So we had like 5 cards for like first week or two, and out of how many employees were we targeting? Like 60 to 70 or something. It could have been more or less, but I mean either way, like that's at least like 5% or something.
Yeah, well, we wanted to. Our target was 50. That was our target. We needed at least by our estimates of the total amount of employees in the plant. We estimated that 50 signatures would be enough to start a union election.
Like in the beginning when we got hired, basically what you want to do if you're going to be union organizing, which is basically doing anything. Like as soon as you get hired, you want to be making like observations about like the factory. Like you want to like be have like a really good understanding about like the National Labor Relations Act, all the sections in the NLRA, and you want to be up on all the OSHA codes, and like what they are doing what they shouldn't be doing. That way, like if you do need to like say something to someone, to some sort of investigator, or even like make a point to the workers saying like, hey, like, you know, they're disobeying like this, that, and this code. You know, you need to be able to like know what the fuck you're talking about. You
Yeah,
know, just
definitely. You want to
shit like that.
have. You definitely want to have a sufficient amount of knowledge in terms of labor law when going into a thing like this. And
Yeah,
Zach was certainly the
and
point
like,
guy
you know, you
when it
need to
came to
know.
that stuff.
Well, you need to know shit like, you know, like you actually are not allowed to hand out shit on company time. Like I'm not saying like I didn't do that. Like I did that all the time. I'm just saying like, you know, they never like caught me doing that, you know. But like if they did, like you can get in trouble for that, and like there's nothing you can do about that, you know. So you got to do it at your own, you know, your own risk basically, because you know you got to be aware of shit like that at all times. You got to know where the cameras are. You got to know who's a piece of shit rat motherfucker, and you got to know who's like a good person. You know, if you're not aware of your surroundings, you're just asking to be like fucked, basically.
Right. We put a lot of work into familiarizing ourselves with the layout of the plant, where all the cameras were, but a lot of our like organizing was done on the lunch break, you know, which is not on company time, to be fair. So we had established ourselves, and like Zach was saying, it's not like we had essentially no sense of where the support would be. All of our direct coworkers that we talked to, and almost all of the coworkers that we directly you know, talked to and got friendly with, they said that they would sign a card, you know. So we already had a number of guaranteed signatures before we even got the materials. Now,
Right.
obviously,
Yeah.
it's regardless, it wasn't smart for us to even be talking to people about any of that before our probationary periods were up. You really want to give it time, but again, we were just, you know, we were rushing. So yeah, so when we got the materials, we just pretty much like immediately just started. I gave a card to my coworker who, you know, signed it on the spot on lunch break, and Zach gave cards to his people, and we, you know, that we started off with a pretty, you know, positive beginning. So, you know, very discreetly, very quietly, we approached people that we felt like, you know, would be likely to sign a card. You know, not necessarily people that we knew very well, but people that would actively talk shit about the company, or, you know, were very obviously you know, disgruntled or unsatisfied with their pay or their conditions. And ultimately, we had a good beginning. We had a good start, but at a certain point, I believe it was approximately 2.5 months in, we were approached by this guy named Jerry, who I guess, well, let me back up a little bit. So we talked to this one guy named Bruce, and this guy would just constantly talk shit about the company. I mean, he was constantly saying shit like, oh, you know, for this pay, I might as well go fucking work at McDonald's instead of, you know, doing this job. You know, he's
He's
pretty,
bitching all the time,
he's
man.
really, yeah, he's bitching all the time. And you know, and so we were very confident that if we approached him, he would sign. And I waited for the right moment. Both of us were just kind of waiting for the right moment to approach him. And there was this one time when when we all went on lunch, and I was having a conversation with my one of my coworkers and the maintenance guy, and we weren't in the break room. We were just kind of like over by the maintenance area, just kind of talking. And Bruce kind of walked over to us, and he's made a joke. He's like, "Oh, what is this, a union meeting?" You know. And I thought that was the right time to, you know, like actually approach him. So as he was walking away, I you know, kind of walked up behind him, and I'm like, "Hey, Bruce, you know, you were making that joke back there, but would you actually be interested in signing a card? Like, would you actually be down with the union?" And he was very nice, you know. He was like, "Oh, you know, sorry, but you know, I'm already old as shit, and like I'm gonna be retiring soon anyway." So he's like, "I'm just gonna, you know, take my 401k and leave." He basically didn't want to get into any trouble, which was, you know, really annoying considering just how much this guy would bitch.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it was dude every fucking day on break, man. He'd be bitching the entire time.
Yeah,
But
literally every day, like
yeah,
no exaggeration.
he actually bitched more than we did, and really
Yeah.
organized. So
Yeah, so this guy, he was in this group of you know, he would hang out with the same group every day. And there's this one guy in that group of people that he was talking to named Jerry. And despite the fact that Bruce said that, he wasn't interested, I still gave him a pamphlet. I'm just like, well, if you change your mind, think about it. Here's the union pamphlet if you want to look it over and just kind of, understand the benefits and like your rights and everything. And he took it and he's like, yeah, thanks. I'll consider it, whatever. So this Jerry guy, one day when we were on break, I think it was two to 2.5 months in, I think 2.5 months in for me and 2 months in for Zach. This guy approached us, Jerry, and he's like, "Oh, I heard you guys are doing a union thing, and he's like, "Oh, I'm from fucking Florida. We don't have any unions down there, He was just like he appeared to be very interested, and at that point, Zach and I, we were just like we both just kind of like knew how to react to the situation because we both thought like, well, if we haven't talked to this guy at all yet, and if he fucking knows already, then it's like, what's the point in like denying it? Like there's no point.
Yeah, he already fucking knows. What does it matter?
So you're like,
maybe what he was trying to do is he was trying to make it so the company could look at the materials. I think that's what he was trying to do, in retrospect. Or maybe the company didn't already know, but he was trying to like be a little rat and get like a fucking 2-cent raise or some shit.
I really don't think that the company knew by that point. I really do think, personally, I believe that he really was trying to be a little, company bitch spy and wanted to, rat us out to get in good with management and maybe get a raise out of it or something, So, he asked us for, he asked us about the union thing, and we're like, yeah, we're doing this, and we gave him some materials. And we're like, yeah, take this card, and if you're interested, sign it and give it back to us, And then Zach and I were both pretty nervous about the whole interaction because we really couldn't place whether or not the guy was being genuine, and we knew by this point that the word had effectively been out, and we suspected that Bruce was the one responsible. Now, we don't necessarily think that Bruce was a rat. I don't think that he purposely tried. At least me personally, Zach has had kind of a different opinion on the matter, but I don't think that Bruce was actually intending to get us into trouble or like, rat us out. I think that he just had a big mouth and, he was talking about it with his group, and Jerry saw an opportunity to, go in and fuck us, So literally 2 days later, when I came in, I got pulled into a meeting with my supervisor. And the supervisor told me like, yeah, we're letting you go because, you're not meeting expectations. I said to him, like, all right, just know that, whatever you think I did, I didn't do it. It's nothing against you. And he's like, yeah, I know. And, I don't really know if he knew that, I was getting fired for the union or if management just told him to fire me, or if they told him why he should fire me. I really couldn't figure out whether or not he knew, but I was just nice about it, and I walked out. And then as I was walking back to my department to gather my stuff, I see Zach coming up, and Zach is like, hey, did you just get fired? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, me too. And I'm like, all right, well, there we go. and so. Yeah. We both, we grabbed our stuff, we both left, and as soon as we got in the car, we called the union rep, and the union rep just said, all right, we're gonna file a suit against the company for breaking the law because according to Section 7 and 8 of the National Labor Relations Act, it's illegal to fire any worker on the basis of them being an organizer.
Yep.
So, they broke the law. And despite the fact that they gave the whole bullshit reason for, poor performance, whatever, it was pretty obvious, just by the circumstances. We got fired at the exact same time for the exact same reason.
Well, not only that, but like when we went back, so like, they fired us, we met up, we understood what happened, we went outside, we were like discussing like what we were going to do. Matt convinced me that we should go back in and drop some pamphlets. So I go back in. I'm like, hey, man, I forgot my phone charge or whatever. So we get back into the factory. We start dropping pamphlets in the cafeteria. And the fucking dickhead, my supervisor, or my old supervisor at that point, he's like, stop doing that. Stop fucking doing that. He's like picking up all the pamphlets and shit and putting them in the trash. Like I'm putting him down, he's picking him up, putting him in the trash. Matt's putting him down, he's picking him up, putting him in the trash. And like he's like, and, they like call, like they get on the intercom, they're like, oh, it's emergency, and then like a bunch of fucking stupid company goons are coming.
Yeah, like this dude walks in with like two goons.
Matt's like trying to give his coworker his fucking number at like the speed of the Flash before they fucking kick us out. And like, I was like, let's get the fuck out of here. We just like bailed out, fucking like sirens and shit as we're like leaving. Like, goddamn, dude. Like,
yeah.
If they're like openly taking the pamphlets and putting them in the trash, and they're like, stop doing that, stop doing that. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. So we went back in. We both agreed. We're like, all right, let's just go back in and just say that we forgot our phone chargers or whatever. So we go back in. I go back to my department and I tell all my coworkers, I'm like, yeah, I just got fucking fired for organizing, and so, that's when we went back to the break room. We met up in the break room and we're like, all right, let's start we're just lay down pamphlets on all the break room tables. And then that's when, the fucking foundry manager supervisor guy, he walks in, he's got like two goons behind him. And he's just like, I remember exactly what he said when he walked in. He's like, all right, you want me to call the fucking cops?
Yeah.
And he just starts screaming at us, to get the fuck out. And, he's picking up the pamphlets like Zach said. And one of my coworkers that I told one of my coworkers from my department that I told, I got fired, he walks in and he's like, hey, give me your number. And so he gives me his phone. I start putting my phone number into his phone, and like meanwhile, the dickhead supervisor, he's like, "Stop doing that! Stop doing that!" He's like screaming at me to stop putting my phone number in, and we both just started laughing by just like the sheer absurdity of the situation. Like we were just laughing in this guy's face because it was just so funny, just the whole context of what's going on. And I regret that we didn't just like drop like a whole bunch of materials, but maybe that wouldn't have been the right thing to do, because it would be better to save the materials. But like in retrospect, I really wanted to just like drop like a whole bunch of pamphlets on the floor just like out of spite.
Yeah, I mean that would have been pointless, because I mean they obviously just immediately fucking picked them up as soon as we left. But right. I'm curious as to like how far they would have gone if we just like kept staying in the factory, because it's like if until the cops like got there, like they would have had to like do something, and like that guy was like fucking like 5'3", so like there's no way he was gonna like take us both on.
Yeah, he's this manlet, and he's.
I wonder like what.
Yeah, he's just like this furious manlet, just like screaming at us. And I'm also curious if because most definitely they would have called the cops, and the cops would have trespassed us. But I'm really curious what if we just kept laying down pamphlets around the break room. I'm curious what they would have tried to do. But I mean, he definitely wouldn't be able to take us both on his own. But like, he did have like those two fucking guys behind him.
In my experience, when you get fired from a factory, like a TCI, they had like some super fat dude fucking escort me out, like some bouncer, like fucking 500-pound dude fucking followed me around until I left and gave him my badge. And then at Saint Gobain, they had like actual guards. Like company guards, like in like uniform, come in. Like when I started talking about the LRA and shit, like actual literal fucking uniform guards come in, like take me out, dude. But yeah, that company was too small; they didn't have that shit. So I don't know.
Yeah, they didn't have any security as far as we knew. So they just relied on their own employees to be their goons. So we went back in, dropped all that shit, and then we left. And and both of us just had the adrenaline like running. We were just like super hyped. Dude. We were super hyped over the whole thing, and then we got in the car and just sped the fuck out of there. And like while we were driving away, we saw a fucking cop with their lights on. And I remember, Zach, you looked at the police reports and you didn't see that there was any call to Unicast, but we definitely felt like we just like narrowly avoided getting trespassed there.
Because the cop was like going down that same road.
Yeah, he's going towards the factory. As we were driving away. Yeah, so we really don't know, but maybe they didn't report it because there wasn't an actual incident. But I'm pretty sure no matter what, like if the cop gets sent out somewhere, they have to report it.
But either way, they threatened to call the cops on us. So.
Yeah, they definitely made the threat. And so yeah, so we ended up we drove away, and we got a call from the union rep, and he's like, all right guys, we let him know like what he did, and he's like, all right guys, it's time to have a beer, because it's going to be a long battle ahead.
And he's like, well, write down everything that happened before you fucking start
forget
drinking.
it. Yeah. Like write everything down and then have a beer. Then so the union sued the company. They filed a case against the company, obviously for breaching the terms of the NLRA. And what ensued was a really long legal battle. Now, normally these kinds of cases take about 2 to 3 months. We were told. From the beginning of the suit to like the conclusion, but literally like just as the suit began.
That was an extremely stressful time, by the way.
Yeah, it was. Just as we pretty much like immediately after we filed, COVID hit. Yeah. And because COVID hit, all the courts were super slowed down. And so in total, it took 9 months for the case to resolve, and it was extremely fucking annoying.
Usually it doesn't take that long, man. It usually takes like 3 months. Man.
Yeah, 2 to 3 months is what they told us, and it really sucked for me, especially because I hadn't worked long enough to qualify for unemployment. Zach did. He did get unemployment, but I was pretty much just like screwed that whole time. And it was, that was the point where it was really hard to get a job because all the workplaces were shutting down. Everything with COVID. The economy was like super slowed down. So I was just like barely sustaining myself for that 9-month period. But in the end, I ended up getting way more money from the agreement, but I'll get into that in a sec. So the NLRB reviewed our case. We gave they called us and they set up a meeting with one of their representatives for both of us to give our signed affidavits. And this is why it's extremely important that after any kind of situation like this, you immediately write down everything that happened. So because it's right when it's fresh, when it's still fresh in your memory. You know everything that happened like to a T, and you got to write that stuff down precisely so that when the affidavit comes, you can give the full story without any missing parts. So we both gave our affidavits, and at that point, in this kind of process, when a union files against a company for this kind of case, the NLRB has to decide whether or not they even want to take the case, right? If they don't think that the case has merit.
That's not just with a union. That's like you can file it. It's the same with every case.
Right, whether the union files it or not, right? Whether the union files for you or you file as an individual, whatever, the NLRB has to review the case and they have to decide whether or not the case has merit. And if they decide the case has merit, then the NLRB will represent you in the case against the company.
Yeah, they'll prosecute the company.
Yeah.
So at that point, the government is literally prosecuting the company.
Right, on your behalf.
Yeah.
And so we gave our affidavits. The company gave their affidavits, and the company saw and we got to see the company's affidavits at a later point, and the company got to see our affidavits. So we all knew exactly what we were saying and what the arguments were. But in the end, the NLRB did decide they decided that our case does have merit, and they decided to represent us against the company. So yeah, like I said, the courts slowed down due to COVID, made the whole process take way longer than it should have. And there was numerous meetings that we had with our lawyers, with the union lawyers, with the NLRB lawyers, and there's just a whole lot of bureaucracy involved. But in the end, after that 9-month period, we finally reached some kind of agreement. Basically, the company said that we have two options. We can either get our jobs back and get half as much money as we would get otherwise in back pay, or we could not get our jobs back and get more money, twice as much money than we would, right? And I don't remember if either of the agreements included a non-disclosure clause. I think the agreement where we wouldn't get our jobs back, there was a non-disclosure clause, but in the end we fought that. We wanted no non-disclosure. So
the NLRB pulled a fast one on them. It's like they literally just got us the money while it was still being negotiated. Somehow it was
right, because they wanted to give us like a ridiculously low amount of money in back pay. They basically wanted to pay us.
They offered us twice the amount of money to not go back into the factory.
Right. And so Zach and I were, it took a lot of discussion, and, we wanted to basically like say like, is it worth going back in, or should we just take the money and, you know, use that as seed money for the next campaign, right? But, you know, we both agreed that, you know, we started this thing and we might as well follow through. So we took the deal to go back into the shop for less money. And, you know, we signed the agreements, and then pretty much like right before the agreement was finalized, the NLRB reviewed the agreement, because they have to review the agreement, and they're like, no, you guys aren't getting enough money. The NLRB basically said that the agreement has to make us whole. They have to at least pay us the total value of the amount of money that we would have made had we not been fired in that period, right? So
money that you got from like unemployment or like a different job you were working.
Right. And because I wasn't working at all at that point and I wasn't receiving any unemployment, I got a fat wad of cash from that agreement. Yeah. And Zach got some money too, but not as much. But he was loaded at that point because COVID, you know, COVID unemployment at that time was so fucking high that it really didn't matter for him, but it definitely mattered for me. And so, yeah, I got a nice, I think it was $15,000 check. And yeah, it was pretty sick. So we basically 2 weeks after we got you know, the agreement was finalized, we went back into the factory, and that was the point that the campaign would really begin. So while we were going through this whole legal case, we actually had a comrade who was going to start working there while we were still there, but he started 1 week after we got fired. And he was going to help us organize and such. So pretty much throughout the entire time that we were doing this legal battle, we had a guy on the inside who was spying for us and was even like kind of terrorizing the company by like leaving union stickers in the bathroom and stuff, you know. And this guy, Seth, he, you know, got really friendly with management. He effectively just played dumb in a really smart way. And, you know, he got friendly with management, and he ended up, you know, overhearing a lot of conversations that were relevant to our case. And that was extremely useful information. And he was, of course, there for the meetings. Once the agreement was signed, the company had a meeting with all the employees, basically lying about everything that happened. They told all the employees that, and, you know, we wouldn't know this if Seth wasn't in there for the meeting. But we know exactly what they were saying. They were saying that we were a bunch of, you know, we were bad workers who were lying to get money from the company and to get our jobs back, you know. They basically just made us out to be just like scammers, essentially, to all the employees. And they essentially inoculated them to like essentially, you know, not listen to us. So when we went back in, we maintained Seth as a spy. You know, we said, you know, you can continue. He was doing good work as a spy. So when we got back, we didn't immediately make him, you know, come out as an organizer to, you know, we just let him continue doing what he was already doing. And then I believe shortly after, or when was it that Matei started there? Was it before we got hired back, or was it shortly after?
I think he started before.
I think he started like just before we came back. So we actually got a second comrade in there too, who was essentially doing the same thing that Seth was, just not as effectively because he didn't have as much time to really establish himself. But pretty much very quickly after we got our jobs back, he also came out as an organizer. And at that point, the company knew that they were in a very tight situation, because now it's not just the guys who had a legal battle with the company that are, you know, trying to get the union in. It's also this other guy who's, as far as they know, completely unrelated to us, even though he was. Oh, we got a bunch of shirts from the union shirts to wear. So, you know, when we went back in there, we had our union shirts on, we had all of our materials and everything, and we were just going to go all in, you know. Zach, do you have anything of note when we just got hired back?
I mean, they try to play it like all nice and shit, you know. That's all. Like, that's what was memorable to me, is like they would be like, "Hey, yeah, you know, like tell us know if you need anything and shit."
Right. Despite them talking mad shit behind our backs to all the other employees, when we came back, they were like super nice. You know, they wanted to They just wanted to basically just like kiss our asses while like while like just trying to fuck us behind our backs. So yeah, so we started talking to a lot more people. So we got a sense of we quickly got a sense of who we had on our side, who potentially would be on our side, and who we knew were unreliable. So people like Bruce, people like Jerry, people that were associated with them. And also Seth gave us a lot of valuable information too about various people that he had gotten in good with and what their perspective on the whole situation was. So we had compiled a good amount of information, going back in and kind of used that, to figure out who we were going to approach next. So a big hurdle, of course, was that, and of course the union, let us know, beforehand that when we came back in that, when we got back in, it was effectively like we had AIDS, like we had HIV, like they, no one wanted to associate with us because everybody was afraid whether they, would support the union, whether they wouldn't support the union. They knew our history with the company, and people were genuinely afraid to talk to us, because they thought that they would also get fired, which was kind of silly because we did get our jobs back, like we proved that no, you can't get fired for supporting a union, but nonetheless, people were still afraid.
And on like just on the sort of like a legal nitpicky point too is like, on one hand, you should never really start organizing before your probationary period is up, but like on a legal basis, there's nothing saying that they're legally allowed to fire you for anything just because. It doesn't matter if you are on your probationary period or not. If they fired you for being union organized, but they still broke the law, and it's still their duty to rehire you and make you whole somehow, So
Yeah.
I mean, that's not to say that the NLRB won't just say fuck you anyway, but like in theory, at least, and especially like in our example, they can't do that.
Right. Yeah, and it definitely didn't help our case that we were still on our probationary periods, right? We would have had a stronger case had we, waited. But nonetheless, it worked out in the end.